All right, well, thank you so much for coming this morning. We appreciate you coming not only to the expo, but taking the time to come on into this seminar. My name is Gary Heber, I'm a video account manager for Cameron Corner, and I have a strong emphasis in the education sector. I have some background on the technical side of higher ed, former supervisors in the rooms. Appreciate you. But this is a very unique concept that Cameron Corner has implemented in several different ways, and what our discussion today is going to be, it's going to be very, very conceptual. We're not necessarily going to give you the solutions today, but we're going to give you a handful of ideas that we've implemented, we've seen in the field. Pardon me, I've gotten some feedback from a lot of different higher ed customers of ours that are already using what we term as ALC rooms. So that could be active learning classrooms. We've also heard them called alternative learning classrooms, collaborative learning classrooms, because there's so many different ways. At this time, I'm referring to what we call them ALC rooms. Scott Tomaszek is one of the members of our team that I have the privilege of working with. He's a very, very skilled engineer. He's going to be fielding a good portion of our discussion today. But we'll also entertain questions throughout, so don't hesitate. We're going to have this very casual. Feel free to raise your hand, we can interact. And then if we have time at the very end, also what I'd like to touch on is some of the realities of wireless video solutions. Wireless video is very, very cutting edge. It's getting better and better every day. And that is a small portion of what can really make the technology in ALC rooms work in many different ways. So with that, I'll open it up to Scott. Thanks for coming.
Thanks, Gary. My name is Scott Tomaszek, and before I moved to the dark side of technology, I was actually a high school band director. So my degree is actually in education, and then I got into all this technology stuff. Been here with Cameron Corner about 8 years, certifications, that kind of stuff. But I want to get right into the meat of the topic today, which is these alternative learning classrooms. How many people are familiar at least with the concept of a pod-based, collaborative learning environment? Okay, that's great. So we kind of established that as a baseline. We can dig into that a little bit more. One of the customers that we've done a lot of work with alternative learning classrooms has been the University of Wisconsin-Eau Claire. And we were very fortunate that just a couple weeks ago they did a presentation for UW schools, and they shared some of their presentation with us, and I just want to go through some of that here this morning. So currently at Eau Claire, they have 10 learning classrooms. We've been involved in the installation of all those rooms. Some of those were rooms that we worked with them right from the design stage. Some of that for the new education building was done. They had a consultant come in and do all the AV design work. We came in and installed it, but then actually went and upgraded some of their learning classrooms with even more technology. And I found this to be very interesting, and these are metrics that they gave us. So in 2013, we started with just 2 rooms that we did with them right here. And you can see that they had this gray bar is the number of classes or the number of courses that we're using in the room. So they started pretty small, 2 rooms, 23 courses. But then by the fall of 2014, just 1 year later, we had installed some more rooms. So they had 9 rooms as part of what they consider alternative learning classroom. But by that point, because of the popularity of those first 2 rooms, they already had 88 classes scheduled in those few rooms really. And with their budgets and how that worked, they were able to add 2 more rooms in the fall of 2015. But you can see that there was another big increase here, and they've got 120 courses for those rooms. Those courses are across 23 different departments and 81 different instructors in those rooms. When they bring a room online that is this type of format, it's immediately booked for classes. So they're really getting a lot of shift into this type of learning environment. Here's a couple pictures of their rooms. Most of the pictures that we have is we installed and took a picture in an empty room. Here it's nice even for us to see the rooms being used. But an ALC is based on pods. So you can see we've got a table here, a table here, a table here, up and down the sides of the room. This room had 8 pods that they used. We'll talk a little bit more about the technology behind it. But the idea is we're getting people together in small groups and working. And if you think about whether it's even high school or middle school or college, we're trying to train people, and one of the things we're training them for is to be part of the workforce. And if you think about your dynamic in the workforce, how many meetings do you sit in where there's 100 people in the room and there's one person at the front talking. That's not the standard meeting. That may happen, but generally when you have a meeting, it's 4, 6, 8 people. We're getting together in a room, we have a project, we need to figure out a solution, and we're working in that dynamic. Because that's the primary reality of the workspace or the office environment, by putting people into that kind of environment in the education process, we're really preparing them for working in that group dynamic as they go out in the workforce. So it's advantageous in both situations. So these are, again, some of the slides they provided. We'll talk a little bit more about their layout. They use it for presentations. So this was a science report that was done. Big thing here is sharing. Everybody's got a device of some kind. We're going to go up there. We're going to share. Here's what I worked on. Here's what you worked on. Let's work on it together. This is interesting. You know, here we've got a pod over here. We've got a pod over here. And as the one group was working on it, if you read the quote, people from the other group was like, hey, what's going on over there? And they just kind of slid over, and you can see everybody sitting there all around the one pod because they wanted to see what's happening. That's a very organic kind of learning experience. Variety of group work. So these are some information. This is some information that the UW Clare people pulled down. It said students in traditional lecture courses were twice as likely to leave engineering and 3 times as likely to drop out of college, entirely compared with students using active learning techniques. They talk about greater retention, greater engagement, improves their communication skills, and a bump in graduation rates. Okay, so that's kind of the dynamic of it, but let's talk about the technology now. Let's talk about how we make these things work. And there's really 2 aspects of an alternative learning classroom from our perspective. And one of those parts is the pod, or the individual table, and the other part of it is how do we tie it all together? So those are the 2 main things that we're going to go over today. So the pod, and you know, if you're here and you're not from an education setting, in the corporate world, you can call this the huddle space, and again, that's been used interchangeably with this ALC concept. But it involves a display of some kind. It can be a TV, we've seen projectors used, and then there's some kind of connectivity at the table, whether that's wired or wireless, for people to attach their devices to and share their content. This particular one is from Extron, and they've got a little button right on the cable that you push. And when you push that button, it talks to the equipment on the table, and then your laptop's up on the screen. So that's one way to do it. Here's another look at the Extron equipment. And one of the things that we're seeing from our vendors, and we'll talk about multiple vendors, is them bundling things together in a kit to help you as the end user to say, I want to put this together, and you get one part number, and in the case of Extron, you get the cable cubby, you get all the cables, this is the video switcher, and this piece right here is the little piece that turns the TV on and off when somebody pushes a button. So it's a very self-contained system that you can get from Extron in that respect. FSR is here. They actually brought a full pod with them, and they have a SKU that actually includes the whole table, the whole furniture. If you're actually looking for furniture, I don't touch on it too much here. We have Spectrum Industries. They're over on this side wall. They're a Wisconsin company. A lot of you probably use them already. And they've got a whole new set of offerings for this type of furniture that we can then integrate this different technology into it. One of the things that's just a little different with FSR, they've got different individual cable pockets you can put in the table, or they have one centralized one. And if you can see it here, there's little buttons right on it, and you notice the color-coded cables. If I've got the blue cable, I push the blue button, so they make it pretty easy to use their things as well. Because what do we want here? We don't want a lot of technology learning curve. Right? We want people to come in, they're busy, plug in, push a button, the thing turns on and it works. That's what we're really going for here in a lot of these designs. Crestron Connected is a very similar type of thing. They've got a circular table cubby that hole saw pops right in, really easy to install. And that's kind of the first part of it. They've got a button that works with their Crestron control systems. But they have a video switcher. Now we start to get a little bit more under the hood. What's behind the curtain? Like the whole Wizard of Oz thing, what makes it all work. A lot of these systems, you saw with the Extron, there's a switcher device of some kind. The Crestron one is designed specifically to work with their pod. They've got VGA, kind of the legacy connection type, and they have HDMI. Everything connects to this unit from the pod, so you can support up to 4 pods with this one video switcher. And the other thing, it does have a control system built right in. Right here's the whole control system, so if you've got a Crestron touch panel or a button panel, you can control everything that way. Or again, use the button that's right on the pod itself. And then what's interesting, we'll get into this in a minute here, is that right here is the output. So it's got HDMI, so you can plug it right into the TV if you want, but that other jack, they call it a DM, but across the industry we're seeing video over Cat5 cable using a technology called HD-based TV. There's a company that makes those chips, and Crestron and Extron, all these companies buy the chip and put it in, so there's some cross-compatibility. The important thing is, and we'll get to in a minute, is how do we take this pod and tie it into a room and have everything work together? So that's a key point to look at. And again, it's not exclusive to Crestron, other people have similar things, but we want this to all work together. We'll dive into some detail with the Crestron systems that we've designed for EW Eau Claire, but we'll go over this here on how to bring it together.
I think one step we'll take that. Do we have any faculty in the room at all? Is there? Okay, so that's kind of what I thought. I figured it'd be fairly minimal. We are recording this presentation, and one item that I'd like to bring to the table is there's a very dynamic group of stakeholders when it comes to higher ed. You all know that here, there's probably a lot of text. So when it comes to designing these types of rooms, getting faculty feedback versus what the AV or IT department brings to the table versus who's actually going to pay for it is usually 3 different groups. So if you do want a demonstration such as this, my cards are in the back, but having these conversations with faculty, what we're going to talk about next is where do you want to share it? How much interactivity do you want? And then we'll go with the discussion of how to design it. That's very, very integral when it comes to the technology that it takes to make it happen.
So a couple months ago, we did some seminars with Schwabenland schools, and we did an ALC presentation. And unfortunately, there's too much interest actually to do this. We are not in an ALC environment here at all. It would be nice to put you on that, but it would be difficult. And so a very simple ALC situation is we just took 4 55-inch flat panels, put tables by each of them, dropped an HDMI cable, and we had a little pretend ALC environment. What's the problem with that? The problem is the teacher doesn't really have control, okay? Whatever happens at a particular pod is only happening in that pod, and I can't affect it in any way. We want this to be a collaborative environment, but the teacher still needs to be able to guide the overall process of learning that's going on. And so the tying it all together is how do we take what's going on in that individual pod and making it work. So some of the things that we can do when we start to tie it together is that information sharing from pod to pod. If I go over to this pod here and, hey, that's really fantastic what you guys have just discovered there and work on, let's share it with the rest of the room. Being able to take, student, John's laptop that's showing on their display, now put it on all the displays in the rest of the room so the teacher can say, okay, everybody in the class, let's look at this. John, you want to talk about what you just discovered? And that takes the collaboration part out of just that one pod and then brings everybody into the collaboration discussion. It's a re-steering of the attention and the focus of what's going on in the room. The also part of is sharing teacher to pod. Some of the very first rooms we did at Eau Claire, it was sort of the traditional thinking. We're going to have a projector in the front, we'll have the TVs out here, and what we found is they really stopped using the projector in the front because we gave them a way that the teacher could take their content and push it to the TVs directly. So the students were focused on those TVs and those displays. Again, we can do it both ways, but most of the rooms we're putting out there don't even have a central projector in them now. 3 different ways to think about this that's going to impact the whole design concept and ultimately the cost. So the very first one is the one-to-one concept, which is what I was talking about before. I've got a TV and we've got some stuff connected to it at the pod, but it stands alone. Okay. Some of the systems that we've decided design is the one-to-all. So I'm doing something at this pod over here, and I want everyone to see it. I can take that, and now I can send it to everything. but I can only send it to everything, or it's only within that pod, okay? That used some more simplified switching and routing things kind of at the core of the system. And then the final version here is one-to-any, where they're doing something and they want to share it with the pod next to them, and now I can do those two, but maybe these 3 pods over here are working on something. So I can take any combination of pod and share it. I want to take my teacher podium and send it to that pod and not that one. That's sort of the advanced system of how that all works. The key though is, even though we've got technology here, we have a central technology switching and routing core that's managing everything. And one of the ways that we've actually maximized this to bring the overall cost down is in the past, whatever was going on here I've got, look at this, here I've got a laptop, here I've got a laptop, here I've got a tablet, is we're going to run all those things individually to a big, huge matrix router thing in the closet, so I can take any one thing and send it anywhere. That gets to be very expensive. So going back to this device, we're putting something like this at the table, so the table can switch between things. But really, what the rest of the room sees is, from that table, is they're just going to see one thing. So we take the output of this, send it to a smaller piece in the center, and that saves money for everybody involved.
Where we've seen in incorporating the one-to-any scenario is if you use that, and if you incorporate interactivity, is the students get things done at that pod and then can show you what they got done. So in the typical classroom, you do breakouts in a scenario like this, okay, group A meet here, group B meet there, work together for 15 minutes, and then have one spokesperson to tell us what you came up with as a solution. With the interactivity in the pod scenario, with the one-to-any, they're already at their groups, they come and annotate up on the screen or modify their document on site, and then share it with the rest of the class. You can see what they actually accomplished in the last 15, 20 minutes.
We'll take a little sidetrack here, just to talk a minute about annotation. We all know smartboards, right? We all know that kind of annotation technology. The thing that you really need to think about when it comes to annotation is it's really the software. The software is what makes it work. The other thing that allows me to touch it, it's just a flat mouse. So I'm using a Sharp 24-inch touch monitor and just using the annotation that's built into Microsoft PowerPoint. That's all I'm doing up here. I have no real special hardware other than the touch monitor itself. And so like anything else, there's a whole myriad, number of solutions out there for the actual touch and the actual annotation, and some people build it into things, so we'll talk about that a little bit. Extron's got a great standalone box that you can do things with. So again, a lot of different ways to do the annotation. And again, we'll touch on that a little bit. But really, it's, what SMART got us thinking was, I have to do everything all together, and really the magic is in the board. It's not. It's the software that lives on the computer. And so you can get something like this and get a completely separate software touch package, and that all works together very well. But the key thing here, getting back on track, is control. So we talk about how do we keep the teacher in control. In the case of the Eau Claire rooms, what we have is a central touch panel that the teacher uses to control the entire space. And then at each of the pods, we have this controller here, a very simple button pod. So what it does is it allows the students to come in, and they, if they have access to the room after hours or something, they come in, turn on just that pod, and they can get together and work just at that one thing and do some work. But in the teaching environment, the teacher can control the whole deal. And again, we've got solutions for Crestron and Extron, a number of different vendors when it comes to the control part of it. So we're going to walk through just a little bit of some of the things that are different with Claire and what the teacher can actually see. So this is the pretty standard. Here's the room's off. We want to turn the system on, hit the button, and we get into the actual control of it. So what you see here is this is the podium controls that the teacher has available to them. And so they can pick any of their sources here that's across the top, and then I can send that podium to the room. Mute all pods and unmute all pods is the teacher can blank out the TVs at the pods. So if the teacher really needs to drive the attention back to the front of the room, they've got the master kill switch to shut off whatever's going on there, okay? So that's what these two buttons here do. Again, so we gave them control at each of the pods. Maybe the teacher doesn't want them pushing buttons and changing things in the middle of class. So we give them a way to lock out those control boxes, okay? The other thing is sort of the default setting right here. We've got local PCs to all the pods. So you hit that button and that's back to that one-to-one. So in the case of a player, they put a dedicated PC at each pod. That's just how they chose to do it. So in this case, I hit that button. Now, one-to-one, every PC goes to its pod and they're all working on their own things, okay? If you notice across the top, we have the different pods listed there that the teacher can control. And this is what the pod controls. So if I want to, maybe the TV didn't turn on, there's something going on over there, they hit a button wrong. Instead of me as the teacher walking over there and doing something on their button panel, now I can basically mimic that button panel right here at my podium without having to go over there and see what they're doing. So these are all the controls that are available on those individual button panels that we give them. So that's really it. We've kept it to a very small amount of screens, and because we don't want teachers having to hunt and find things and going through all that. The teachers there really like it. We actually, the consultants for the new education building, I put in a particular wireless package that was meant to do all this for them. They had already used our rooms for a year. They got into the new rooms. They're like, we want what we got over there. We don't want this stuff. So we went back in and gave them these touch panels, gave them this kind of control, and that's what they're using. Wireless. It's the Wizard of Oz theme is perfect for this because at the beginning of the movie, they're told, just go to Oz and you will get these wonderful things. And then they get to Oz and they find out it's not really the sales pitch they got before they went on the yellow brick road. And wireless presentation is the same thing. There are a lot of caveats, and frankly, technology is changing too fast for any one manufacturer to present to you a solution that will allow you to do any device at full frame rate video, wireless, the whole thing, no matter what they walk in the room with. A lot of people are trying, it's just changing too fast. So you have to understand the product, and that's where we can help you. Look at the different options, look at your budget, and decide where you want to make those compromises, or if you have the budget to not have to make so many. Some of the things that we have here at the show, we are an Apple dealer, you're in education, we can't sell it to you. But it's the reality that's out there. You've probably got some rooms where you've got an Apple TV in the room. We have the Kramer Via Collage. Via Collage was actually the Wow Vision product, if you're familiar with Wow Vision. So they have that in their booth, you can check it out. We have Crestron here with their Air Media. We have Christie Digital, they have their Brio set up in their booth, and you can check that out. And we've got the Extron ShareLink. So let's talk about these a little bit. So there's a lot of information, but I tried to compare what differentiates these from each other at different price points. Some things do some things very well, and other things not well at all. You can tell I'm an engineer, not a sales guy. Apple TV, it works fantastic with iOS devices in your home. It is not really meant to be on any kind of enterprise network, and the Bonjour service that it uses is constantly hitting your network with, data to request things and who's out there and all that. And if you're an IT security guy, they don't like those Apple TVs living on the network. And you got to patch them with a wireless system. And if you look, it's great at showing the iOS desktop. It's not going to show on Android. It works with certain Macs. Enterprise security, not really. Annotation, if you have something on the iPad, but it's not natively built in. If I'm presenting on my iPad and Gary's got an iPad, he can't see my iPad on his. There is a peer-to-peer option on it, but it's not a wireless access point. You can't do simultaneous display where you're showing multiple things, multiple users' tablets on the screen at the same time. There's no moderator mode, but it's $99. So you kind of get what you pay for. As you look through this, if we go up near the top, if you look at the Christie Brio team, it does iOS desktop. It does Android. Again, asterisk, Android operating system 5.0 or later. I believe that's Lollipop and I forget the other one. Laptops. It's built on enterprise security. They've got white papers on how to put this in a secure environment. They've got network engineers on staff specifically to talk to you about how to get that working. Annotation built in. You know, if I'm presenting, I can have Gary annotate over the top of my stuff off his iPad. Remote view. He can see what's up on the screen on his iPad if I'm presenting. They have versions with internal access points. It's a 4+1, so if you actually hook up 2 displays, you can have 4 things on one display and 1 on the other, and flip them around and slide them in and out. There is a moderator mode, okay? And as you go down the list, you start losing some of those features. We've done a lot with Crestron Air Media. It does not do a native, you know, if you watch the little propaganda video, they show them with an iPad, putting stuff up on the screen, looks great. It is not a straight desktop view. It's taking files, you know, from Dropbox or the photo gallery, whatever, and pushing them up to display. That can work. You know, that might work for you to save $1,300 or even more. So again, these are list prices in education. We know that you're always buying less than that. So with wireless, you really have to know what you're getting before you jump into it. You have to look at it from an AV perspective, and you have to look at it an IT perspective. This is blurring the lines between those two worlds, and depending on how, you know, what the relationship between the AV and the IT department on your campus or your business, that's something to take into consideration as part of this whole thing.
You should note too that the examples that we're showing here are network examples. There are wireless point-to-point video solutions. I use those a lot in conference room design or in areas that you really just can't get a wire up there. There's power, but you can't, you know, explore ceilings and you want it to aesthetically be appealing. There is a lot of point-to-point solutions. Kramer makes them, Extron makes them, and I can show you examples of those.
Yeah, those aren't really meant to be collaboration devices. I can't get a wire there like he was saying, but the Extron E-Link is a very stable device. You know, we've tried different wireless devices in the past with some success and some not success. That's been the bulk of what I wanted to go through. Let's see. So a couple things I want you to take away. This is a great opportunity here at the Expo because we've got Crestron and Extron and FSR with their things. I mean, they've got a whole, you know, table set up in their booth. Spectrum's here. You know, it's a great opportunity. There's the Barco ClickShare, which I didn't talk too much about in one of the booths. So a lot of opportunities now that we've kind of got the juices flowing on this stuff to go talk specifically to those vendors and say, tell me more about your product. And then when you go back and talk to the people at your organization, I think this is the direction we want to go. Then you can engage us, and then we'll actually start putting it all together into a unified system that all works together. We didn't even talk about here about back-end management kind of things. A lot of the systems for like Crestron and Extron, they have back-end IT-based management of these rooms where, you know, at Eau Claire, they'll call the help desk, they can log into the Crestron Fusion server and see what's going on in the room from a technology standpoint, turn a projector on and off, make sure it's on the right input. So that just extends how we manage these rooms to keep them up and running and keep everybody connected. When we design any system, the primary thing is determine your sources. So at the pod, what are you expecting to show? What are you expecting people to bring in? I need to support MacBooks. I need to support laptops. Do they have Chromebooks? Is it, you know, Samsung phones, iPhones, tablets, Sony tablet that somebody got for Christmas when they wanted an iPad? You know, we don't know what it is going to be, but by helping define that a little bit, how much wired connectivity? You know, Eau Claire has a dedicated PC that's wired in all the time, and cables for a laptop. Do you want wireless right there at that pod? So I'm wirelessly showing on that TV, or just one wireless point? You know, an Air Media for the whole room, or Christie Brio for the whole room. Determine what you want your sources to be, what's going to work for your students.
Since we have all of you in one room, the most common response to that question is, we want to use everything.
Yeah.
First thing that I hear. And we can do almost everything, if not everything. But taking that with limited budgets and focusing the administration on one or two different platforms as opposed to everything will certainly save it that kind of cost.
And then determine the displays. So again, the reminder, do you want this room to be a one-to-one type of space, and we're okay with that? You know, we need to equip 10 rooms and we only have X amount of dollars. Maybe you start with one-to-one. You know, are we fine with one-to-all? It happens in the pod or everybody sees it? Or do we really want the flexibility of any-to-any? You know, and then what do we want to show them? TVs, projectors. One of the things I want to say about TVs, just a word of caution, is the consumer TVs that are out there, specifically the warranties on consumer TVs, are only viable when used in a consumer application, like your house. If you put it in an educational environment, something happens with the TV, they may not honor the warranty. So we've got a number of options from people like LG and Sharp, where it's not the full 24/7 rated displays that are thousands and thousands of dollars, but they have displays that are designed more for digital signage that work in a more commercial or education setting. Warranties are 2 years, warranties are 3 years, and they honor the warranty in that situation. So a little bit of buyer beware. You know, we've had people that go to Best Buy or something, put the TVs in, and they die, and they're not getting any help. You know, we will recommend to you the displays that work in your environment and have the right kind of warranty and things to back that up. But where do we want to see it? Maybe you want that projector. Some of the rooms at Eau Claire have 10 pods and they have 3 projectors in them. You still may want to do that, so where do we want it to go? And then determine control. Who do you want to have control of the system, and where do you want to control the system, and what do you want them to control it? Because we can give you control on an iPhone. We can give you control on an iPad. Do you want that? You know, a little bit of a Pandora's box with that. You have to be a little careful. And that wraps up everything I have to present to you. Do you have questions at this time? Or do you need a minute for it all to sink in?
Actually, on that one slide where you had all the different wireless devices, you had Christie and Extron asterisk to asterisk.
Oh,
The other way.
this one.
What the asterisk?
So with Christie Team Brio, Android added capability with their devices with operating system 5.0 and higher that allows you to display those devices with Wi-Fi. Previous to that, they were using a wireless technology called Miracast, which was a point-to-point and a short distance type of thing. So in a bigger classroom, it became problematic that you couldn't, like I have Miracast and it sort of works with the box, but ranges, you know, it wasn't going to work all the time, basically. So Android made it wireless, more like the iPhones, and that works a little better. The other asterisk, Android desktop, the Extron ShareLink can work. There's 2 different versions of the box. So you need to get the right version of the Extron box to work with the Android desktop. Internal access point, Christie Brio, they have 3 different models. 2 of them have radio antennas built in, so you can do more of a point-to-point type of thing. One of them does not, where you're using the wireless access built into the space, and then you're putting that on the same network. But the Christie Brio is the only device that actually has 2 network ports on it. So you can put one network port on your secure wireless side of things, and the other network port can be on the guest side, because that's one of the things that will come up. But what if I've got somebody coming in from the outside, or it's a business situation, I got an outside vendor coming in, I don't want to give them access to my secure wireless. So the Christie Brio can be on both sides of that, and internally they're completely separated. Again, Extron ShareLink, they make a version with an antenna in it and one without. Because Extron does a lot of work in DoD, you know, so they could put that in and use secure wireless or whatever's in the buildings and not have a radio antenna. That's some faster trading. Other questions? Yes.
Do any of these, other than the Apple TV, do a true mirroring of an iOS device?
Christy Brio does.
So if the instructor pulls up an app and they're playing around in the app, that actually shows.
You will see it in Christy Brio and the Kramer Media. And I haven't honestly gotten over to the Kramer booth to see if they have it set up that way, but I know at the Christy Digital booth, you can take an iPad there and hook right up to the stuff and see it. Other questions? Well, again, I know it's a lot of information, and this was to kind of get you thinking, and what we really want next is for you to engage us on a one-to-one level, so we can drill down in a little bit more detail and find out what direction you want to go with. So please fill out the comment cards, and then we'll do our drawing here. I believe we're doing it right here, right now.
UW Claire, where we've done a lot of these installs, has opened up the opportunity that if you have faculty that are interested in getting faculty feedback, they have a lot of faculty there very willing to talk. Like I said, my cards are on the back. You can shoot me an email and I can put you in touch with faculty that are already teaching in those rooms just to get their questions answered as well.
And we've done other universities too, Madison College is one of them. And one thing that was included in the Eau Claire PowerPoint that I didn't put up there is, and they've sent to us, is considerations for faculty, right? Because adoption is a big deal. And how many schools have you heard about where they put in smart boards and 4 years later those smart boards just have dust, right? It's an adoption issue. You know, so they have some pointers about what type of teachers are the ones that are grasping this and really flying.